Hello, I'm Suzanne Marriott, a partner at Charles Russell Speechlys. I'm speaking today to Paul Gorman, who is co-curator of this wonderfully vibrant exhibition, Print, Tearing It Up, here in the Charles Russell Speechlys Terrace Rooms at Somerset House. Paul, as co-curator, I'm interested to hear your thoughts on Print, Tearing It Up. What inspired the exhibition, as I know that you own quite a lot of the collection?
Yeah, I think about 50% of the magazines in this show are from my own archive. I've been a lifelong collector, so for more than 40 years I've been obsessing over magazines, and I guess one of the reasons for the exhibition is that I thought I could trace a lineage of particularly progressive magazines back through the ages and back to actually 1914. That's really our starting point, is with the Vorticists. It was intended as a quarterly magazine called Blast. It only made 2 issues because the First World War intervened. There was a detectable lineage between Blast and, say, Private Eye in the 60s, the Underground Press in the 60s and 70s, the Lifestyle Press in the 80s and 90s, and the current generation of new magazines being published today.
What period does it cover?
The exhibition is focused on the contemporary. I'd say about 50% of the magazines in the show are being made today or have been made since the turn of this century, in the new millennium. But nevertheless, we needed to trace the antecedents and the context in which contemporary magazines are published back to actually the beginning of the last century, before the First World War, which is why we started with Blast, which was a great modernist manifesto. It aimed to, and it succeeded in some ways, in sweeping away the Victorianism of the previous era. The World War I interrupted that, but nevertheless the seeds were out there for such magazines as Peace News, which grew out of the pacifist movement in the 30s, and then on through the 40s, through such magazines that we mention in the giant mind map we've made of all the magazines that are of interest to us, such as The Week, which was Claude Coburn's magazine, which in turn inspired Private Eye, still going today, selling more copies than it ever has done, with 500,000 copies a month, with its mixture of biting satire and investigative reporting. So that really triggers the main part of the historical part of the exhibition, which is from the 60s to the present day.
Why is this exhibition so important?
We live in an age of fake news, and the internet, while it's borne forth a lot of great things, there's a lot of unreliability of information. And the thing about print is that you have to take care and consideration and commitment to actually put ink to paper and then circulate it.
Is print a particularly British thing?
I think it is, and I think the troublemaking and oppositional aspects of this show are quite British as well, if you look at the history of this field of publishing. I mean, this goes back to the pamphleteering, which actually started in the 17th century. I mean, Milton, Thomas Paine, of course, was a great pamphleteer, and I think that we have a fine tradition of circulating ideas, original, vanguard, left field, avant-garde ideas through print.
And which are your particular favourites, Paul, and why?
My particular favourite is Mush Pit, which is produced by 2 young women, Charlotte Roberts and Bertie Brandes. They're on their 10th issue now. It's really taken publishing by storm in this country, because it reflects the values and interests of young women around the country, feminist women as well. It's full of satire and jokes. In fact, Bertie has said previously that because humour was so much a part of their offer, they couldn't really contemplate a website, because you can crack a fantastic joke on a website, but then it's gone. Using a magazine and having been influenced by and maybe reacting against the male-led magazines such as Private Eye, they wanted to adopt the same approach of satire and mickey-taking, which again is, I think, a very intrinsically British thing, and it's a thoroughly modern magazine which kind of hooks into Me Too at the moment as well, and they've been pioneering that, and in fact they've spawned quite a lot of other magazines, not necessarily imitators, but other young women have been inspired by Mush Pit to look at fashion and look at politics and look at their daily lives in a different and often humorous way.
Can you take us through the highlights?
We have the latest edition of Galdem, which is the magazine for young women of colour, which is in the same vitrine, which is just as challenging and disruptive 114 years later as Blast was all those years ago. And the only website we have in the show is Galdem's website, because Galdem was produced out of their own website. So it's a thoroughly contemporary magazine which grew out of and as a reaction to the online environment.
And how do you think the digital age is still affecting the print industry?
It's affecting the corporate print industry in a big way, and so the corporate model is failing in terms of magazine. We see that with the closure of Look not so long ago. Glamour by Condé Nast, that was selling 260,000 copies a month, but yet it still would not work economically.
Do you think that niche and independent magazines will always have a place?
I think they will. I think there was a period where we were almost about to lose them. I think this was when the internet was on the rise and major publishers were really quite scared. It happened to the music business to a large extent. You know, music was being given away for free. What's interesting is that people are prepared to pay for magazines. We're at a point now where a lot of this new generation are basically those who came of age post-crash, post-2008, which is why, and we didn't plan it this way, so it's quite serendipitous, our show is quite well timed. It's 10 years since then, so I think the field is open and everything is up for grabs.
How long does the exhibition run for?
The exhibition opens today, which is June 8th, and it runs until August the 22nd. So it runs for 10 weeks, it's free to entry, so there's absolutely no excuse for anybody not to come.
Thank you, Paul, and I'm sure this is something we can all relate to, and I'd encourage everybody to come and see it for themselves.
Thanks, Suzanne.